Welcome everybody to the Lawrence Community Shelter Board of Directors meeting for November 30th. It is 5:35 and we'll call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. I think I'm looking at the I have somewhere in the the financial reports. So the first thing on the reports, I did not get them. So we just got the September and August reports added to the shared drive.
Yeah.
But I didn't get it pushed out by email to everybody. So we'll just defer this and it'll be multiple months. We'll defer until the next meeting. And there is a folder in our board drive. So I'll maybe just send the link to you guys so you guys can peruse that at your leisure.
And just to,
These are from our accountant, so we get monthly.
yeah, but my question is, are we in a positive position?
That'll be under the ED reports.
Okay, great.
But in terms of our standard, balance sheet, income statement, those standard financial reports, they're in a shared drive, and that's kind of how you can look at them ahead of time or anytime you want to. They go back 3 years, so there's all that. But in terms of getting it into a public open meeting like this, where it can be viewed by anybody, that we'll just have to defer until next month. Any other changes to the agenda? Melanie, you wanted to put something up for consideration for approval on the $5,000
yes.
bid.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna maybe add that under just our regular agenda.
It can just be part of mine.
Well, in my mind, it's like, if you're doing reports, there's really not an action item, it's just a report. So if there's an action item related to your report, then we should add it into the regular agenda. If that makes sense. Approval of bid for replacement heat exchanger. Anything else? Okay. As we get used to this process, if your committee has action items that it feels like need to be considered by the whole board, you just tell me ahead of time and then we can queue them up. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
I second.
Okay, any other discussion about the agenda? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. So we'll go to reports. I should have crossed out financial report. Go to interim executive director report, please.
Yeah. I was trying to see if you put the city updates, or was that just part of my report, or did you have to do it separately? Because I think it was separately earlier on the agenda. The city update.
I put it under operations committee.
Okay.
I didn't have any details for yours, honestly. I know you said it, but I didn't put it on here.
I just gave the union update. The union election for the staff at LCS was held today. I have not been updated on it. It should have been over at 5, and then the ballot count after that. When I do get the official word on that, I will get that out. Our staffing, we have been considerably trying to increase for winter shelter. We are currently operating winter shelter, and we are not denying services to anyone whenever the temperatures are extreme and below 40. Currently, as we'll talk about later, I've been updating procedures, and we are learning from this time because we're not really used to operating at that level. So now we've had 2 cold snaps that we have been able to experience operating at that higher level. This last one, we were operating probably just over 130 people for the majority of that 5 days or so that we kept everyone in. It has gone smoother than it did the first time. I think that the people that are not frequently at the shelter are kind of learning of our expectations. And it was also a holiday, which often helps, a lot of people kind of look forward to having that meal and being together. And, but it still is a little bumpy. We're trying to just figure out processes that make, the intake process, and also how we conduct our census and monitor people coming in and out, and understand, what the numbers are if people leave or new people come in. So we're just trying to find better ways to track that. Currently, we are testing out wristbands that are colored that indicate if someone has been checked in that day. I think that will work well as long as the guests are okay with it. Any change is difficult for people, so we are getting a little bit of resistance, but overall it's doing well. And unfortunately, with everything that I've been trying to do at once with the union process and doing documentation and trying to update policies so that as I'm writing procedures for pallet shelter and for winter shelter and our programs in general, and trying to figure out the adjustments that are made and what makes the most sense right now. I have not been able to put a lot into like a presentation for the boards to look at tonight as far as the current financial projection, but I've been looking at the numbers and I've developed it. And currently we are receiving a higher than usual amount of donations, just because of the time of year it is. And we've been able to access funds from the city, and I'm currently doing more grant reimbursements for expenses. And we should be able to make it easily to mid-January with what we are seeing right now. So I'm not concerned about us not being able to make it through the end of the year at this point.
That's good news. That's even with increased expenses doing more services.
I can't quite anticipate what the increase will be, but I did make an adjustment of kind of the trajectory we're seeing currently with that increased payroll and increased expenses. And the city's picking up a lot of the changes right now that we need to help out.
Okay.
And ordering items and different things, and that's helping us not have that upfront expense.
That's so when, and I know the pallet shelter's up later in the agenda, but you know, if the shelter's managing that too, are we responsible for this paying the staff? Like, do we have the funding to pay the staff?
That will be
as that increases.
It'll be part of the proposal for the funding from the city that we're creating, and we're actually having a long session tomorrow to help develop that.
Thank you.
Can I just want to clarify that
Sure.
that's the expectation, right? That so Barry's gonna join us tomorrow, Barry Feaker. The three of us, Melanie, having the information of what's needed now, what exists now, giving some insight from Barry on what works. And then you guys, are you expecting a proposal from the city then to?
No, we will present it to you.
Yeah.
But you want us to, you want the city?
Let's get done with that discussion when we get down to the operations.
Okay.
Anything else under your report, or any other questions from the board? That
I've got a question on the, what we had talked about at the meeting the last couple of weeks on that temperature mark. And again, it's wind chill factor as well. Does precip come into play with any of that, or is it wind chill? Is that how we're deciding? And I saw something that they were saying, I think Denver is talking about raising, I think Denver right now is at 20-degree threshold, and they're talking about raising it to 32 to be in alignment with most places. But we're setting it at 40.
So currently we're operating at 40, which was consistent with what the city had done before. And when I researched other shelters across the country to kind of get an idea of how they operate and at what number that they make that determination. For low barrier shelters, the most common number that I saw was 32 degrees with the wind chill. So in my policy development that we will create an approval process for so that I could get those approved. Currently, I am drafting those at 32 degrees with the wind chill. I also am putting language in there that it's gonna be ultimately the call of the executive director or a designee of the executive director. So if there were a situation, that due to precipitation or maybe it's warmer, but the roads are still icy and the buses aren't running, or a situation like that, then the executive director can make the call to maintain that.
And that temperature threshold is not only in terms of emergency shelter, but also the ability for guests to remain on the premises on continual basis.
Yeah, so ideally, we would not deny anyone services or exit anyone during those times. And a lot of shelters that are low barrier, if there are extreme temperatures that could be a risk to life, even if someone had been banned due to not meeting expectations, or even if it was someone not eligible for services, you wouldn't want to deny them the door. Like you would want to get them into shelter and then make a determination on what to do. If you can find a partnering agency or someone to assist you, or if you need to get a hotel, but you wouldn't want to turn them away. In any circumstance to where it could cause a loss of life.
How do you balance that against the safety of the other guests? Like, there's that.
So in my policy I'm drafting, it also says that the person that can make that decision would be the executive director. So if knowing those circumstances and being able to balance that is going to be written in the policy.
Okay.
Do you have any, the email that last went out had the call for partner organizations? Curious if anyone responded or had any progress on that front.
I have not heard any, and it would be the same for families with children under that policy. We would not turn them away. Even though we typically do not serve children, if again, there's a chance for a loss of life, they would not be turned away, and we would let them in the door and then try to identify how we serve them best. Whether we identify a safe space temporarily within the facility, or we work with a partnering agency, or we get a hotel, we would identify an answer and not turn people away.
Any other questions? Okay.
So why,
Yep.
out of curiosity, sorry, why would we not be able to utilize a monarch in that case scenario?
We could.
When you say get a hotel, it just.
I said if we couldn't
Okay.
identify. Ideally, if we don't typically serve children, because it may be hard to supervise or for a family to supervise their child and feel safe in a space. The space currently, where we don't have the security cameras and we have a lot of blind spots, and just thinking about the spectrum of people that we serve. My preference would be right now is that we would probably find another place for them to go, but we would not turn them away. So if Monarch Village would be answer that.
All right. Anything else? Okay, let's move down then to committee reports. First report is from the exec committee. Are you comfortable giving an update on how ED search is going?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
So, we got 100 21 applications, I think, for the ED position. So last night, the exec committee met to kind of narrow that down to 10 finalists, and we were able to reach consensus on those. And then we have a sort of proposed process that we wanted to bring to the board to see what everybody thought about moving forward with it. So we're looking at kind of doing a 3-round proposal, and this is kind of a very tentative, so if people have feedback or concerns, we're open to adjusting. But the first round, the 10 interviews with the kind of final, the first 10, we were thinking that the exec committee could conduct those by Zoom. And then through that process, we would narrow it down to 4 kind of second round finalists. And then they would interview with a partner stakeholder group. So we'd have another board member who's not an exec committee member. We'd have a staff member from LCS, a partner, either from the city or county, probably the city, a guest at the shelter, and like a donor or volunteer who's been active. And so that's sort of what we're thinking. And obviously that's another thing, if people have ideas of others we should include, we're very open to that. And then we wanted to do a final round with the 2 top finalists with the full board. And that would be like an open meeting like this. And then the plan would be, you know, we interview both of them, we go into executive session for discussion, and then come back out to the open meeting for the vote. I think that's pretty much what we talked about. I'm
Yeah,
sure there's
and
other things.
timeline is maybe one of the big questions up in the air, like, given we're entering into, you know, a season that can be hard on everyone's schedules. We're gonna shoot for having the first round interviews completed by next Tuesday. Tuesday after next, I'm sorry. So then, that would, if assuming we can get all that scheduled and done after the 11th, we would then have this panel interview process. And the panel, as we said, would make up these different stakeholder groups. They hopefully could finish up by the next board meeting, which we haven't set a date for our December meeting, but I was thinking it could be the 3rd Thursday, so we're not skipping into the 4th Thursday, which is between Christmas and New Year's. That's where it starts to feel a little tight. Like, can we recruit the panel? Can we get the interviews scheduled? It'll be fewer people because we're gonna try to narrow it down to 4, and then get all that done. And then the last round, the 3rd round was, can we do it all in one day? Can we get all those interviews, do the executive session? Or do we need to give pause for people to reflect and think about, you know, that, or is it too much to try to squeeze into that last day? We were trying to shoot for how do we get this done by the December 21st board meeting, which I started sweating after I got home and thinking about it a little bit longer. So,
I don't think the 3rd round.
you know, well, it was just in my head, we hadn't set that date. So I was thinking, well, the next board meeting would be the 21st, and then the next one after that's, you know, we're gonna talk about this, but maybe the 25th of January, which then feels a little bit too long. So we're trying to get to like, what is the goal for when we're gonna have this done? And then, of course, there's time for whoever we offer this to. It won't be like that starting the next day, so, you know. So yeah,
just to-
thoughts on it?
Well, one of the things that I'm a little bit concerned about is making sure that we're creating space where there is some confidentiality in play. I know a lot of people who might be applying to a job already have an existing job. And it might complicate things with their current employer. So how do we make sure that, it is
Okay, it's a good question. So with that, what we were considering, little other pieces that we didn't get to. The step between the first round and the second round is when we'd have the background checks and reference checks. So there would be 4 people that we would ask their permission to then reach out to their references. So that would be one moment where there would not be confidentiality potentially, right? But nothing would be public. Those 4 would still be internal no public notice of that. It's the transition between the second round and the third round, when there's ideally two finalists, that would be public.
Yeah.
So at that point, you know, that, I mean, they have to, the issue they'll have to address.
Yeah.
But does that help with,
Yeah, I feel more comfortable if it's a smaller population, that is, needing to be public, but I don't want to discourage or make anyone withdraw a good candidate for that risk, you know what I mean?
well, basically the finalists? You know, like the semifinalists will still be private.
Right.
The finalists will be the two. I mean, one of the questions is 2 the right amount, is 4 the right amount? We're pretty sure that 10 is the right amount. So, but I don't know if we wanna leave some flexibility there. If we look at those 10 and do the interviews, and we're struggling with getting down to 4, or we only think there's 3, I don't know. This is where we gotta be flexible. The idea was to create this stakeholder group as a different perspective. And that would give us some of those input from groups that we think care about the decision we're making, so.
Yeah.
But then that public thing, I don't know how to get around it. Eventually,
Well,
the finalists are gonna have to be publicized.
I think we gather the stakeholder group now, I mean, I think looking at the week of December 7th or 11th, I think you could. I mean, I think that's enough buffer from the late winter holiday that I think you could still get robust participation if you think you could get through the 10. I mean, not trying to be overly ambitious, but I know it's,
Well, we penciled up, we blocked out time on Monday and Tuesday of that week. So it's kind of like, we're expecting we'll finish Tuesday, we'll have our 4. So then that gives us next week to start recruiting that panel. And hopefully maybe even block out time for them to do their interviews. So that way it's all queued up, assuming the candidates can fit into the schedule we're giving them.
And so Charlie,
Mhm.
again, with that sequence, we'd be saying the board would meet on the Thursday, the 21st, is that
So this is kind of where we haven't set a date for our
right?
December meeting. But if we wanted to do it on the 3rd Thursday, not the 4th Thursday. The previous
So we
board,
have a question I'd like to find out from the board members right now is, you know, we want to make sure if we're getting to that stage, we've got at least a quorum, if
Mhm.
not ideally everyone. And if that's,
well,
there's a problem,
I
I don't think I've got a problem with that date.
yeah, I imagine that the 28th is probably harder for folks to.
Yeah.
Meet, so.
Well, and I just talking tonight, I hadn't thought about it actually, the interviews happening at the board meeting on the 21st, if we met that soon, and that seems really. Like, the
See why
stars would have to align.
That's why I was starting to
Yeah.
second guess ourselves
So,
after we left.
What
the
if
meeting.
I don't know if we need to have a December board meeting, if we met like the 1st or 2nd week of January, and that would give time for the finalists to travel here if we are doing the 2 finalists. And I think Elizabeth's point about the confidentiality, I mean, that's a valid concern, and I think where we were coming from is, do we wanna we don't wanna just bring one candidate to the board, probably, you know, because then that's really not the board's decision if that decision was made at the second round. Yeah, here you go. But, so it's sort of balancing, like, the board making that
I guess I'm
call.
just wary of, you know, by the time our selection would be determined, I mean, we're looking at the end of January before anything could possibly come into play, and
Mhm.
I'd rather, you know, why can't we achieve this on the 21st, if
Okay.
not sooner?
I
Yeah,
kind of would like.
I mean, that's
to
how
do
we,
that too.
that's how we were definitely thinking last night, and then. I started to have second, you know, about just whether we're
I mean, I think
being too
everybody,
ambitious about it.
I think everybody who's applying knows what we're dealing with,
I hope so.
right?
does it break open meeting rules if we watch a recording of y'all's interview?
I don't think it would,
Because if
I
you
guess,
record your Zoom meetings, then that gives everyone who's not a part of the executive committee an opportunity to observe that in consideration of the final board meeting so that we have some time to,
Mhm.
not ask our own questions, but reflect at least on what we've observed.
I suppose one consideration would be whether whether the candidates would consent to that recording, if we're okay with just saying this is how it is. You know,
Because as I understand it, you'd be saying that those two individuals would be the one that would be vulnerable, or those would be the ones that would be public, whereas you'd be interviewing four, right?
we're gonna interview 10. So what I think I heard you say was, those
Yeah.
two
I
that
mean-
advance all the way. It'd be helpful if you could get a chance to see how that interview went.
Yeah, I mean, it might be
Yeah, I
helpful
agree.
to, cause there are gonna be a certain
Mhm.
members of the board that won't see all the process leading up to this moment. And if there was a way to observe it, it'd be helpful.
So another thought would be, the second round, that panel, we were just starting with just one from each of the groups, but we could say it's, two board members, not the exec committee. So that gives us the second round, two more get the chance to have some interaction. And then in the third round, the other two would have that opportunity then, but how does that feel? I mean,
It's always fine, I just wanna avoid some people meeting them the very first time, the night of the decision.
yeah, that was, so I have long notes on after I got home and thought more,
Yeah.
and that was one of the considerations is, for some of you, this will be like your only time. Yeah, that felt a little bit off, like, how do we give you a better chance to see what's happening, so.
Right.
And that one idea was putting two of you on the second round interviews. The other consideration is adding a little bit more to that final round. So it's like, some people might not be from Lawrence. They might want to know more about whether they're interested in coming here. And we talked about a tour, but we weren't really clear on when should we do the tours. Is it something you want to do with the second round? But then we're gonna probably have to do in person for second round instead of Zoom. So we thought, let's maybe just kick that over to the last round. And the in-person might be more, maybe we spend some time, like, the other two board members could take them around, show them things.
Yeah.
Take them to lunch.
Yeah.
And then we schedule the interviews. Schedule the exec session, so
Absolutely.
I guess that would be like block off the 21st. Especially if you're interested in doing the tour guide part of the work. The key would be that none of us can talk to each other outside of the little space that we're part of. So exec committee can have our discussions. If there's two in that second round, those two can talk, but you cannot talk to any of the rest of us. And then if you're part of the last day, you can talk to each other, but none of us. That way your interactive communication is never with the quorum. I believe that follows the spirit of the coma.
Yeah.
So all that said, the dates for the 10 are what?
December 11th and 12th.
Yeah,
That's the 10.
yeah, that's the most certain part, although I didn't want to start scheduling until after today. I figured we'd have this discussion, and then if everyone thinks that's okay, then I'm gonna start nailing those down tomorrow. Hopefully, they're all available, those 8 hours that we blocked off. Our goal is to do like a 30-minute interview, have a 15-minute break, and then just kind of knock them out. And figure out like who we thought the top four are and move that to the next round.
And that round is,
So that's where it's a little less clear, like
yeah,
we have to recruit a group, but we wanted to be thoughtful about the different perspectives. It was at least one more board member, but maybe we go with two board members. An employee, maybe two. I mean, this is where we're needing the feedback. Like, I don't want to struggle to get two if that's the goal, but if we can get at least one from each group, that's good. maybe if there's two, that's also good, but then it makes it maybe harder to schedule everything.
I'm happy to take
So-
this on and coordinate with community partners, staff, and send you guys a proposal list on this, if that's easy for you.
That would be great.
Great.
So let's, I have it on the regular agenda item to actually try to make a decision on it, so maybe you can start formulating a little motion.
Mhm.
So I think what we're looking for is like, what is our, at least marching orders? We think this three-step process should work. And I do want to be careful, we're not getting too locked into it's X number of people per group, but at least one, maybe two, it's kind of a range, I would say. And then if we have ideas on those people, I think we should share that tonight also, so. Anything else on the ED search? I'll say broadly, I was really pleased with the number of applicants that we had, that was more than I expected. There, obviously with any search, there's people that aren't really qualified, but there were a lot of really strong candidates, and for me, a lot of it, the filter I gave was, have they ever worked with this population that they'll work with? And then do they also meet the requirements? But it was like, there were folks that had a lot of strong leadership experience in nonprofits, but they maybe weren't familiar with the population, and it was nice that there was enough of those people familiar with the population, but also had experience, so.
You're welcome, by the way.
What's that?
The way-
Oh, I'm sorry, thanks for,
And which includes me, so I couldn't.
Oh.
And I just wanted to mention too, that we might have to request potentially a special meeting, depending on what we need for the approval of the proposal or policies as stated, so there might.
Oh,
be an
so we're gonna have a
opportunity to
meeting.
check in.
yeah, that's a good point. So we'll get to that one in the,
But just,
but, so there's possible we'll have to call a special meeting before the 21st, which gives us a chance maybe to check in on this ED search.
So just, kind of on the mechanical aspect of bringing someone on, how many of those applicants would you regard as, local? Meaning, I guess I'd say Kansas City, Lawrence. Or how many,
I don't have the answer, but I certainly had the same question, and I just didn't get it done this morning. I was,
But several.
yeah, most,
Well, I mean,
Majority.
I'm thinking about not only the idea of somebody having to give 2 weeks notice on an existing job, but the relocation aspect of it,
hmm,
but that's a burden.
At this level role, we should expect longer than 2 weeks notice, I would assume.
yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
No, it's a mix.
Another one forego a really great candidate because they feel like they can't leave their current employer in the lurch, so you may have to figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else on the search? Okay,
Yeah, and my question was this, the background check,
mhm.
kind of how we do that, if you, I mean, because
I just know there's a practice of doing that.
yeah,
So how does that, do you want to tell us more about how that works?
yeah, we use TransUnion and we really only would prohibit employment if they had a crime against a person that was violent, against vulnerable adults, or kind of the same things that black box people or providing care, like whenever you're in the residential thing, but otherwise we use our discretion. Because of the policies and the backgrounds we work with, we don't want to completely exclude employees of LCS because they may have some maybe minor background, because we want to hire people that we actually serve, and sometimes they have a background. So we have this process. We send it to TransUnion. They give us their personal information, so we can put it in within a couple of days. We usually have full background.
okay, I don't necessarily think any of the staff ought to be involved in that, and are we able to access that, or?
For the ED specifically.
Correct, just for the ED, not any of the other employees.
to do an ED background check for the top candidate?
I don't know, I mean.
I guess maybe a way to think about it is there anything that stops us from just finding a company that does this and doing it ourselves?
Well, at one point I thought there was some mention that the city would potentially provide some HR support process. Is this a scenario that could come into play? Because yeah, I agree with you. I think having staff involved in background checks on individuals would be problematic.
Well, and I mean,
Well-
they wouldn't necessarily have to be if we submitted it to TransUnion and then it was just sent like to Charlie or something, right?
We can look at the account and see if you can add like an admin or a user that can get their own information, and we can ask TransUnion, and I don't really know what other agencies do, like, I feel like the HR always has.
Well, I think the issue is we don't have a search firm, so.
I can ask and see, and then
Right.
Charlie, you could just communicate directly with our HR
Yeah,
personnel, so.
I think let's look at either option. So you can tell me more about the TransUnion, how that
Yeah,
might
we'll
work.
find out if it can be done.
And I think that's a good ask for the city.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the background checks? I know it's gotten some news recently
Well,
about,
I think it's important.
Yeah.
We're doing the background check. Obviously, it doesn't have to, there are certain things in people's past that would be things that we would, not hire folks for, but I don't think that we should exclude people for a variety of different things. We understand that the folks who have lived experience are really are sought after for these roles, and I think we should be really cautious about how we do it, but I think I would have a hard no with anyone who has a history of theft and embezzlement.
Financial crimes, that was my first thought.
yeah,
So it's a hard no for me.
yeah, I bet.
And that's kind of what we do, like abuse, or exploitation of vulnerable adults probably would be something.
Oh,
And
Jill,
sexual assault is 100% a hard no for me.
Yes, so things, yes.
Jill just offered up in the chat that the county can do the background checks if need be.
Perfect.
Thanks, Jill.
Done.
I think we just checked that off the list then. I think the only other piece we would need, I feel like we need to have some clarity on what's the standard. Like, how's the policy? Like, if we were to say, here, we're gonna hire this person, and turns out they don't meet whatever the requirements are, so is there any other,
Yeah, I'll.
like, HR expectations we need to kind of consider?
Can you ask Jill how long it takes for the background checks to come back?
Sure.
Or Jill's out there?
She's listening.
Jill, if you're listening.
And I've got an idea of a list.
It usually doesn't take that long, but I'll double check with, Charlie, I'll send an email to our HR manager in the morning and I'll copy you and give her a heads up that I've volunteered us for this, but
Okay.
it usually comes back within the same day.
Oh, wow.
Okay,
Yeah, ours do.
yeah,
We
all right.
run them.
Well, we just started the process at the health department, and it's not that fast. Yeah, they're blaming some breach of the state's criminal justice database or something, I don't know.
Could be that.
The courts, the state court system.
That actually might be real,
Yeah,
but we'll
I
see.
know, I'm joking, but no, it's legit, right? So
Yeah, no.
that's slowing down our vendor that we picked. All right, is there anything else about the ED search that anyone wants to hear about or know about? or-
I mean, I don't know if you want me to start asking around and seeing if I can get commitments, but as for board members for that next round, I think John and I seem to make sense because I think executive committee, Chuck would be the only one.
So we were thinking Christina, she's the other officer on the board, and so she's,
She'd be in the board.
Mm-mm.
no,
She's not.
the exec committee doesn't have, because we tried, we didn't want to have.
It'd be an open meetings violation
Yeah.
if four of us were.
So it's like, she's the lone officer that's not on the exec
Yeah,
committee.
okay, then that makes sense.
So I was kind of thinking like, maybe her role then is to chair that second panel. But what I'm hearing is you're interested in helping, so maybe that would be,
Well,
like,
maybe-
two of you
yeah,
could-
yeah,
she's not here to
Yeah.
accept that. But
They can both, yeah.
you can put that in your motion.
Well, I would also just mention anything that needs to take place on the 11th and the 12th. I'm gonna be out of town on a business trip, so I wouldn't be available on the 11th or 12th.
The second round would be after that. Our first round
Okay.
interviews are the 11th.
So we're talking about the second round here.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm still.
But the
trying to
third
get in
round-
my head what the dates are. What rounds.
I was kind of imagining that Chuck and John, you guys would be the third round hosts. Giving them the tour, taking them to lunch.
I can take people lunch.
You know, and then you guys,
I'm good.
Our swap.
And we're talking about a tour of the shelter. Right?
Yeah.
yeah, and probably Pallet Village, probably camp, whatever. I mean, this Misty, even you might be interested in.
Yeah.
Like that part, so
That would be great.
you just gotta,
Covered.
well, the challenge might be, this is where it gets into like, do we do all this in one day? You know, to have two candidates. Get kind of that time and space to do this might be tough. If it's all in one day versus if we do, you know,
Split it up.
Yeah.
yeah, so that's something.
We'll do it in different sections.
But what would be great is if maybe that was baked into the motion, like. Second round will be like this, third round will be like this, and. You know, Christina and you will take the lead on the second round.
How detailed do you think this motion needs to be?
You know what, I just think we need to have some sense that they're telling the public, here's the plan.
Yeah,
And
Yeah, I like the big broad
the
outline.
exec committee is managing the first round and then the broad process, but. The two of you are gonna take on the second round, and then the two of you are gonna take on the third round.
so how about just for a motion, we do 2 board members. A member of, staff from the city or county. And 2 community partner organization representatives.
We had employees and
Employee
Oh, you wanted-
and
donors
yes,
and volunteers.
at the shelter.
Okay,
When
and
we get to that on the regular agenda, we have some actual names too, to
Okay.
toss out, but maybe we should. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't
Let's
think,
go back to let's just, is there anything else on the committee report for ED search? Okay, so the next item I wanted to update everybody on was exec committee, was tasked to have a meeting with the representative from the union and with Melanie. And that task was not completed because when the union filed the election, to have, I forgot what the technical terms are, but once they made their decision to proceed with petitioning the National Labor Relations Board, our interaction with them can be misconstrued as potentially trying to manipulate the process or interfere with their process. And so it was decided by Melanie and me that we would just not go through with that conversation. So that's why the two of you didn't hear from me about that. However, I also reached out to the city and county asking for any legal support or advice, and they don't actually fall under the same federal law. And so their legal teams aren't as familiar with National Labor Relations Board law. So they referred me to a labor attorney out of Kansas City, who I reached out to and finally got the call with him. And his cost is significant. This is his profession, his space. He had a couple options. He said he can kind of consult, but not like take the lead on the work. And that's a less expensive approach. And we would not necessarily start with that. It would be more like, let's do our best to manage the process on our side. And then if it comes to needing support, we could, reach back out to him. He'd be happy to do that kind of on an as needed basis. But he also provides that full service, like he leads the negotiation with the labor union to, develop the collective bargaining agreement. Because that first year of doing that can be pretty expensive. Because I said, well, give me a ballpark, 5,000 enough? And he said, no, that's like your annual cost. When you're just basically doing the iterations. And So I took from that, you know, we're gonna probably have to figure out another strategy that doesn't involve just contracting for someone to manage that process for us. We might have to do our best and think about, like, when do we need to touch base with an attorney? And make that not a frequent occurrence, I guess.
Yeah, you might have expertise on the board that might help us know when to touch base with the outside chancellor. I'm not.
Say, labor relations is its own.
I really.
Yeah.
Very few
Um,
places in Kansas have dealt with union.
And then another, I also got advice about maybe reaching out to the school district about who they consult with. But they actually have, one of their employees retired from the school district and now works for Kansas Association of School Boards, and he does the work for them as part of the association. So it's a little different, like, he's not a private practice attorney now, he's doing it statewide, so.
So we're just thinking we need retention for the contract negotiation process.
Yeah, and one thing he did point out, he asked me like, what are the main motivations for this? And I mentioned, you know, among other things, one of the considerations is safety of the workspace, and he said that's actually not, like, there's a list of things that are expected in a collective bargaining agreement. Workplace safety is not one of them,
That's a no-show regulation and not a.
I suppose. I mean, this is where we obviously have to learn a lot, but there are things that that's not part of what a union is. You know, if they are in any way implying to the workers that this is gonna be a way to improve safety, then he said that's misrepresenting the law. So those are the things, like, an attorney that knows this is gonna know what's appropriate, what's kind of not. And we don't know much of it, I mean, none of us know this.
And
really.
depending on how the vote comes out, the ball's in their court, they will send us the first thing. And
Yeah,
at that point, we can read it and go,
yeah,
okay, we're gonna have to pay the money because we need help, or this doesn't seem that crazy,
yeah,
you know? I mean, just depends on what we get, I think.
I do
right.
have an update.
Oh, you got the results?
Yeah, I did get a message. The voting unit voted unanimously to approve the union, so the next
Okay.
step will be, them starting the negotiation process.
All right,
So we will know soon.
all right.
What there is.
So, let's see what happens. And unless there's other, questions, I'm just gonna keep assuming this task is on the exec committee's plate to shepherd, so. Any other questions? Okay, let's move down to the operations committee report. Who wants to pick that up?
Well, we've had a couple of meetings out at LCS in the last couple of weeks, and mainly looking, well, a handful of things. I mean, we're looking at working with the city on some rather significant changes in the warehouse to bring that section of the building into the winter emergency shelter possibilities. And I know that there was also some work being done on the Monarch. I believe to bring those back online and operational. I don't think we've gone anywhere into the college shelter aspect on site at this point. I don't think that's really moved anywhere that I'm aware of.
There is a little bit of work in process on that, just looking at things.
So there's been a substantial transformation of the warehouse to allow that space to be utilized. We've had a couple of rounds of visits on the food service. I had forwarded to Melanie a proposal from an individual who would is interested in working as a consultant, a part-time consultant, to bring the food service operation into play. They would not be the continual manager, but would be assisting with hiring and training and developing ordering procedures, establishing vendor contacts, making some small amount of changes in equipment. A lot of the equipment that exists right now is in good condition. The city has put some work into some of the repair and work on the equipment. So there's not a lot that needs to change in that way. To extend food service to the pallet village will be another step, but I don't believe that, from our discussion, I don't believe there's any suggestion that there would actually be food preparation associated with pallet, but it would be more of an area where hot foods would be available but not prepared on site, so transported from the production site at LCS. So as far as where we are in that process right now, I feel like we have somebody that is within a week willing to take on those roles, and they've developed some of the aspect of staffing levels and things of that nature that would be needed to come up with 200 meals a day. Well, I guess 200 meals for 200 people per day. So 3 meals a day.
That's a pretty significant upscaling of that part of the work. So
It is, but I mean, honestly, the capacity of the existing site is good. And with a couple of additional pieces of equipment, it would be very suitable. And I mean, we're not necessarily gonna, even though I think it has the largest walk I've ever seen in existence. I don't think we're talking about a lot of, prepared to the minute meals, but more things that are good, nutritious, hearty, and able to be provided, on a reliable basis.
Well, I just want to say, Chuck, I really appreciate your lead on the food service work. You obviously have expertise in that, and I think it's a huge improvement. Like when I got on the board, that was a concern I had about food, and part of it was just fear of not having the funding to sustain food operations. Just knowing that you're helping make that work feels really good. Like one of the core parts of our mission is to feed people.
John's done a great job of kind of rallying some of the crew that he's had involved on, some of his projects. And how did the weekend go? You were.
Well, we survived.
Yeah.
Most important thing, everybody got fed
You were helping with the food this last weekend?
pretty well. Yeah, I just put a few small groups together for a meal on Friday, a meal on Saturday, and a meal on Sunday. It helped me a lot too, to get a perspective of the beginnings of what things are going to look like and be like, particularly during the winter, in that space.
Helped us to see it. Yeah, and just like with Just Food, it's, the demand was high and the supply had been low, so it'd been difficult to really rely on a whole lot from those low to no cost resources.
My thought process behind doing that, and by the way, it's not just a one weekend, one time thing. My thought process behind doing that wasn't so much the providing the food and the preparation of the food, because as Melanie, as you and I talked about, you're not without food to prepare.
Mhm.
But because we were in the process of opening things up broader for the winter, and we're now kind of moving into winter emergency shelter for the very first time. So the staff was going to be experiencing for the very first time the influx of potentially many more people than the staff had previously had to manage and deal with and so on. So we're in the early stages, and we'll have more staff as time goes along, but We don't today. And so I just thought if we could periodically give them a little bit less to do. Because there's quite a bit that goes into the preparation of at least the lunch and dinner, certainly. That was the bigger, to me, that was the bigger piece, you know, in that was that component. And I think, and it was a good thing because there was some unrest that the staff would have been a little bit challenged to be preparing food while that was
I
going
heard
on.
you were there.
Yeah, out there, I decided not to stick my nose in the middle of it. And then after, yeah, never mind. Anyhow, so
But it is things that we.
I would say as time goes on, you know, through the course of the winter, if there's the need from time to time to, you know, to do that sort of thing, then, you know, by all means, let me know. And, I'm pretty sure I can throw a group together here and there on pretty short notice, you know, to at least provide that break. I'm hopeful, anticipating though that in pretty short order, the staffing needs are gonna be bolstered.
They are currently growing.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
do have some thin spots that we're trying to work on, and I also said that we probably need to overhire right now because of the amount of turnover that you have in this field anyway. So that we are definitely working on getting that staffing bumped up because the transition is difficult. And we're learning and we don't anticipate everything but we are definitely learning from it.
Well, John, thanks also then for your work. I think, you know, we all know how important it is to feed people, and it's the times I've volunteered, whether it's the winter emergency shelter or doing intake at LCS, when there was food available, it was obvious people were eager to get it, and that, you know,
And they're grateful.
yes,
I
yes,
want
yeah,
people need to hear,
Yeah.
because we, all too often, we read and we hear the bad things.
Yeah.
And bad things happen, and they'll continue to happen.
Yeah.
But I will assure you, and people that I had there preparing and serving the food, their first comment was, oh my goodness, how many times people said thank you and meant it. And God bless you, and
Yeah.
we really appreciate this, and they do, you know, they do, so they're appreciative. They recognize the value, and they recognize that we care. And I need to be careful because usually now is when I go into a spiel. So,
well, one of my daughters has to get some hours for volunteering for school, and I signed up for the serving meals on Sunday, this coming Sunday, and she'll come with me to help out with that.
there you go.
It'll be interesting to see what her thoughts are. She's just heard me talking about this stuff, but she hasn't seen it.
And I've said before too, that whenever we are able to feed people and they're able to rely on it, we see a complete shift in mood and we see a lot less conflict. People coming in hungry, going to bed hungry does not help anyone.
Yeah.
So we are definitely glad to be able to do it. And I'm glad that you guys focused on food and we're working on volunteer improvements also to help support this. But that allows us to focus on the operations of how we navigate the space and supervise and support the best we can right now, because in some places it is difficult for the staff because we're still working on getting that staffing bumped up.
Well, I guess, Melanie, the one thing that I need to get a good sense from you of how I can proceed in further development of this, because ultimately it will be LCS employees and it's going to be LCS budget, so I need to have a good sense of what steps I can take additionally to keep this moving along in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I think we'll have a better concept of what next steps are after our lengthy, meeting
You're having a
tomorrow.
meeting tomorrow.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, we're gonna spend a day of planning and really thinking about, the organization's structure and the staffing needs, what that will look like. And what makes sense for us to implement now to where we're going in the right direction moving forward to be able to support other programs.
Are there,
Can I ask a question on operations on the item C there on the pallet shelter?
have we had enough on the food service? We talked quite a bit about the winter emergency shelter.
Like,
Is that-
the only other thing I would say is I think the most important things were really already talked about,
Okay.
and earlier, as far as where we are right now. And in my mind, where we are right now is we're open. That's big.
Is the warehouse got beds and everything now?
Yeah.
So
It is cleared out. I have never seen.
how many beds are there? Like,
65. It's,
so we were talking about, I think I can't remember the number we threw out, the meeting we were going on the numbers. 100 was the max possible, we thought, but so it ended up being 65.
There was only, that was half the beds that exist out there.
Okay,
So we just took off the top bunks and put them in the.
okay.
Oh,
yeah.
So then is it,
Okay.
so does that just redistribute the beds or is there actually increased
It
capacity?
Just redistribute, and then we also have yoga mats still
Okay,
that we use in previous shelter if that isn't.
so what is the capacity at this point, I guess, would be? Like 130 says what you ran the other weekend, but, I know we might be working through some other things,
So-
but,
The special use permit is based on the code for the dorm areas, for sleeping. So that 140 number is actually asleep people, and so I guess that's actually a flexible number,
okay,
because that is saying who can sleep in a space safely. So we aren't turning people away. If the beds are full, they can sleep on the floor, on mats. But a lot of people, they might work, at night typically, but then they're there at night on their days off and they're awake all night, or whatever that situation is. So it's not all those people are sleeping at once. And what I'm trying to do is create procedures where people can check in and out between the common awake areas and the sleep dorm areas.
okay,
So if they aren't ready to sleep, they could be up and doing things in the common area, whether it's day or night, and then the opposite. So not everyone's going to be sleeping in beds at night.
We did have the hospital donate a bunch of chairs that people could actually sit up in and sleep if that was a need, so they have those on standby. Yeah. So, we can pick those up.
so this is an interesting idea, the consultant, KDAD's hired a consultant from New Jersey, I think it's Bergen County, Housing Authority, and they, how they manage the winter emergency sheltering is they use a process called sit-up shelters. So it's really, you don't get a bed, you don't get a yoga mat, you get a chair. And, people sleep in chairs a lot. Even I fall asleep in a chair sometimes. So it's kind of like mostly getting you out of the cold temperature into a space that's heated. So you can get through the time.
well, and I talked to her about that, and she indicated that was because of their, like, special use permit.
Similar kind of conditions, yeah.
And so they were, I think they call it code blue or whatever,
Mhm.
so many people who can come in and sit in a chair.
It's also a motivator to get people to want to go over to the bed and have more comfort.
Interesting.
That's what I was gonna say too. If someone is in the dorm area when people are sleeping and they're not ready to sleep, and it might be causing a disturbance to others, they can be assigned to the area that people are up. Until they're ready.
Cool. Sounds like we've gotten progress toward increased capacity and it's sounding manageable. That's good. Pallet Shelter Village, you wanted to,
Well, I guess I'm just looking for a little bit of clarity because some of I've been operating under the belief that we've said that LCS is going to be the operator for that, and yet there have been some comments about we're not sure who the operator is at one point. So where do we sit in that picture?
I think we said we're willing.
Yeah.
That's,
Okay.
that,
Yeah, so we have to develop.
I think,
Right.
yeah,
That's this meeting tomorrow.
Part.
it's process.
Yeah, part of it, yeah. So. Yes, we need to figure, on our end, we just need the amount of money that you guys are gonna need to operate it.
Okay.
And then I'll take that before the commission can approve it. And
So how
so
do,
I thought we're looking at running out of money faster, so I was panicking. But if we've got some more time, that's helpful. But I do,
But
you know, we need that space
Yeah,
to,
we also need to get things up and
Yeah.
running.
And which pallet? The pallet behind LCS or the other one? Okay, okay.
is the pallets behind in the parking lot behind, has that been less of a priority at this point? Or,
it'll take a little bit longer,
okay,
because we'll have to spend a lot of money putting electric in there.
What utilities,
So,
okay.
and making sure it's
okay,
up to code, but, it can be expedited as well. So I would like to tomorrow get as much as we can done so that, we can then get that out to everybody for review and approval, so we can get that going and get the money through. I mean, we also need to think about hiring and,
mhm,
Yeah, and honestly, getting all that going quickly helps us because we have so many people in such a small common area space. And when you start seeing those numbers actually in the building, because it looks big and people see it from the outside. But when you're in there in that space with that many people, it is crowded.
Doesn't feel so big
Difficult.
anymore, does it?
No.
Yeah.
When is
And
the,
how are we, or the question of who will be residents? And that's something that the city will assess, the LCS as the operator will assess how's that decision being made?
so, I mean, there's a criteria and it was in the, ops plan that I sent out, and that's gonna be basically veterans, disabled, elderly, women that have experienced domestic violence, those priority populations. Absolutely nobody that has violent or sexual, crime against them. You know, so just the eligibility criteria has to stay what we agreed with that neighborhood, like we just can't trek away from that ever. So, as far as a selection process, the city and Burton Nash met with everybody that is camped at New Beginnings and just around, on the levee around that area. And some other camps around there, just kind of gauging and saying, having surveys and saying, like, are you interested? And then getting their information. So we've been compiling that information. If there, I mean, I think a permanent solution is gonna be the by name list. So, you know, getting everybody the most vulnerable. And then also, we've reached out to, your housing specialist, blanket on her name, Juliet. Cheryl, yes, and asked her, just kind of said, this is the criteria, do you have folks, you know, that maybe are in the 90-day program that we could move on into specialized unit too, so, yeah. Just really looking at the most vulnerable.
And it would be really good if we could start using coordinated entry for shelter services. We currently only use it for housing services, but that allows all the community partners to come together and look at the people that are needing shelter. If we did it that way, look at their priorities, their needs, and their vulnerabilities, and as a team, determine who is the best fit for different programs, and get people supported that way.
And our time frame. I mean, the photos and showing the construction, I mean, it could be that by the end of the day today, all of the structures were in place, or what's the status of that?
So they'll be completed on Saturday. But I would want to make sure that we have, proper management there on site and case managers before anybody goes in there. So, is that something that you guys want to wait on until you have a new ED or, or do we,
There's so much more. I think the process has to start now, and of course, I mean, it's gonna be a work too, but I know the work needs to be done now, to get it going,
Yeah.
because we need those spaces.
And, so that's a whole nother staff. Right?
yeah, and we do have, some staff at, Camp New Beginnings that are interested in applying, and, we identified a city liaison that would always be available to, the village and then also to the community if there's ever any issues. So if it's, helpful, maybe, it'll probably be Cecily or myself, we could be on site for the first several weeks and just make sure that, because we did the ops plans together based on everybody else's ops plans that we pulled from, and, so we're pretty familiar with how it needs to operate to be safe and effective, and, have already kind of worked on the MOUs, with other agencies, so I'd be happy to help out with that, if you guys are interested.
And I think because it would be all LCS employees, we have the opportunity to have people that can like float and help support, and fill in when there's a need to. As an agency, we could do that and figure out a system to help. In case, there's not enough staff there
Yeah, I just
because
want to
of
make
call-ins or whatever, that we can deploy people to.
I just want to make sure that there's really, highly qualified individuals, staff there at all the time, and that we're not like, begging and borrowing from one place to another, that we really identify, strong candidates, to make sure that this is successful.
Absolutely.
So effectively, the employees now that are at Camp New Beginnings are city employees.
Temporary.
And temporary, but hired by the city, employed by the city. And any of those that would take on a position at the Pallet Village would then become an LCS employee.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Consideration is there anything we can do to expedite, the smooth transition to, the qualified candidates? But we probably need to publicly post the position before we did that, so.
Yeah.
Do you have a job description?
Mhm.
Oh. Unfortunately, we probably should at least get that posted, because if we're gonna have to leave it open, hopefully we'll have an executive director while we're collecting another 100, right?
Well, those employees aren't, those would be, we don't hire those employees.
I know, but we can still post,
Yeah.
right?
That would be,
I think we have a job description.
For,
Sports side, or sorry, the village.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
created the
Yeah.
job description.
So at least the top person, whoever we think is gonna be the
Yeah, we.
assistant director or whatever the job.
We identified a supervisor, 2 case managers, monitors, and so those are the job, we created all those.
Yeah, I don't think we could wait on the ED for those job positions now, so, yeah.
No, not if we're gonna get it
This is-
open in the
this
future.
is
We
too
have
critical
people in
to-
the tent.
And if you want tomorrow, so we can work on getting it on our template or whatever,
Okay.
and, so we can get them out. If we also post, we can post.
Yeah, and then if for some reason we needed to move the staff that are at the camp now, we could probably continue to pay them until, unless if there's a.
In a transition or something.
Yeah. we'd be ready to support that.
I'm hoping all of our staff, we all have qualified staff in successful locations.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else under operations committee? Are you guys, assume, I know it's an ad hoc committee, just. You have any sense of how? I assume you're gonna continue to exist for a while, so. No issues.
For a while.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things that I was kind of surprised about this, and I guess it's, maybe this comes into operations question. But, you know, the fact that we were looking at an invoice for a repair job at the shelter, it's like, where is that? Where do we make those distinctions between what's a staff decision and what's a board decision? I mean, do we have, is it a dollar amount or, you know?
Yeah,
Well, our original purpose of kind of creating the committee was around the scaling up operations. But those are questions I think the board needs to figure out, because that's stuff that Melanie and I have talked about for a while now, about policy approval at the board level. That hasn't been historically the boards, they haven't had that sense that was their job. But we need to decide, like, is that our job or not? We hope we say yes. And there's a whole bunch of policies that are queued up for us to kind of review.
Yeah.
You know, which is where we're gonna get to later, but around financial items like that.
Yeah, I guess I see there's going to be plenty of additional work for operations
Mhm.
committee.
Well, maybe operations is not, maybe it becomes a standing committee if you think that's where it's gonna go long-term wise.
Yeah.
But
You want us to set a date to come back to the operations committee with what we've developed tomorrow? But I just want to make sure we stay on track and.
that'd be great. I think that would be good.
I think what would be, what I would like to get a little bit more understanding of is how you guys want to keep the board, kind of up to date with what's going on, and that, like, this is where you don't have anything that's interactive, but you're messaging one way to say, here's kind of where we're at, can be really, can provide a lot of assurance to those of us that aren't on your committee, like that progress is being made and things, you know, you're a whole new committee, taking on a huge task. So today it was great to hear updates, but I'm sure, some of that, you know, could have been communicated through emails, just a little like, hey, here's where we're at this point. So even if it's just a quick written blurb to the board list, just kind of with that caveat, don't respond. This is not a dialogue. This is just us giving you an update. That'd be kind of nice to see that. Anything other
So
members?
I kind of have a question about, because I know you all are meeting tomorrow. At what point do we talk about like the money that the shelter needs in order to take on Pallet Village? Like who's, you know, I want to make sure that that conversation happens and that we're all comfortable with the amount before we start that.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we're developing that tomorrow, do you guys want us to present that to you then, or how do we want to do that?
What I was imagining is the operations committee was gonna eventually bring to the board, here's our proposal that we're gonna give to the city. And that would be kind of when it becomes like, okay,
So would that be done before the next meeting?
Yeah.
I think I was
it's
gonna propose.
it's getting the sense that.
Yeah, we gotta have a special board meeting,
Yeah,
right? I
It-
mean, I think we should have all.
It's sort of feeling that.
Once a week. I know, it's already.
All right, Shannon.
I'm not, I think between now and the end of the year, I think we should figure out how to meet weekly.
All right, well, let's, where do we wanna put that? Under the regular meeting schedule, we'll just,
Preferably on Thursday.
okay,
So,
all right,
Maybe-
anything else for operations committee? We can move on to the regular agenda,
Yeah.
okay.
We can still do it. We can do it at 1:30, there's nothing. Or
Oh,
12.
yeah.
All right, moving down to regular agenda. And first item on the regular agenda is the ED search process.
I think we're ready for
Alright.
the motion.
Motion on the floor.
So you want me to get specific, I can do not specific names?
So my concern about that is we don't have, I don't know that. I'm trying to figure out how do we do this without, breaking any rules around coma, and then also maintaining privacy of people that aren't employees, right?
Yeah,
Because you're looking for community partners.
it won't be coma because
So-
it will be only 2 board members.
No, it's about just our discussion about, like,
Yeah.
Here's
you
the
know,
thing that
what
I
are your
think
thoughts?
is that. I mean, at some point, we just have to trust our other board members that they're gonna do
Mhm.
things, and I say. We have her motion about, we're gonna have this meeting, it's gonna be these types of representatives. If we have somebody that we wanna suggest,
Email
can-
directly to me.
email her.
Yeah.
Right, but otherwise, I don't think
That
we
seems
wanna
fair.
discuss staff or guests or other people in an open meeting.
But I think what you can include is like, if we have recommendations,
Please send them my way, and then, and as well as, understanding that we're going to have to pinpoint certain days, and we won't. It's not feasible that all these people will be available at this specific time of day, so that's why I don't wanna name certain people, because it's just not realistic, but conceptually, our goal is that it's an employee, 2 board members, a guest, and community partners,
and
And partners.
the staff,
City or.
and city and county staff, yeah.
And did you include LCS?
yeah,
that's-
employee,
Employee, that was
if
all.
there's employee, a guest, donor / volunteer,
right.
someone with that perspective. And then, partner / funder, that's basically.
City or county.
City, county. And then the board, 2 board members.
Yep.
So,
Alright.
those are the 5 perspectives.
You got somebody in the waiting.
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. And then when do you need our recommendations? By tomorrow?
Well, so I guess if, I'm organizing the folks. I don't need them by tomorrow per se, because we will need to know when. I guess we need to start deciding when round 2 is, because then I can start putting out those asks, but. I can't imagine that everyone who's I'm gonna ask is gonna say yes, so.
Yeah.
Keep them coming and we will capture that audience when we get it.
So if everything goes the way we hope to plan, we'll be done with round 1 on
By the 12th.
12th.
Okay, so then we can shoot for round 2.
Into that week
I
or.
mean, that would be kind of the ideal is by the end of that week, both round 1 and 2 are done.
Perfect.
And then we're actually on target.
So I need to find 4 evenings. Okay, perfect. And then do we want to? We could try to do it all in one night.
Those are details we can leave to you.
Yeah, we're gonna leave that.
Like really, it's like,
Perfect.
if these are the 5 groups to represent, create the panel for the interviews.
Perfect.
And then,
And then will you give me contact information for those 4 candidates so I can make sure I'm fitting within their schedule? Because first step is making sure their schedule works.
once we get to 4,
Yeah.
yep,
Perfect.
then basically we'll advance it to you.
Okay, great.
And then we're done with our round 1.
On it.
And then you shepherd the next round.
Got it.
And then I would say the 3rd round would be shepherded by the 2 of you, if you want to take that on.
We may want to say 2 employees because of the union, so we could have a member of management and then a member. of the union potentially.
I don't necessarily think that that would be appropriate.
No.
I think just,
We don't need management
we can just send you recommendations and
Yeah.
we can just gotta trust you to do whatever.
I mean, it is actually, to be perfectly frank, not very common for ED search to have staff at all. So I think 2 would be
We use staff on our
Yeah,
research for the health
you
department,
know,
Oh, interesting.
so. And it was like one frontline, one that was more senior.
I guess it's
That's what I was,
Mhm.
yeah,
How about him?
suggesting.
So, you have a motion ready?
My motion is to, coordinate a, coalition of individuals consisting of representation from the city and county, donors slash supporters, 2 board members, partner organizations, guests and staff, to convene second round interviews with the 4 finalists to the executive director position.
Second,
Okay. There's a motion to conduct the second round, led by Elizabeth and another board member with these other stakeholder groups. Any discussion about it? Then all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you for stepping up for that.
Well, I've been the one that's had the easy job not being able to be on either committee, so.
You know, we didn't notice that last night in our discussions, did we? So,
oh, you might have locked you up for this.
all right. I feel like we're probably gonna end up with another conversation or board meeting before we get past second round, so we could maybe give ourselves time to think more about what the third round looks like. Let's go on to the next topic. Approval of bid for replacement heat exchanger. And maybe you can cue this up. You were thinking this is where we don't have a policy per se.
I didn't know that, but,
I have it.
okay. So currently, one of the major things I'm working on is updating all of our policies, because as we change our operations significantly, I want to make sure that our procedures are in line with our policies and policy in line with our mission. So that's what I've been putting all my time in, is developing that. But as Charlie was saying, historically, we haven't always had board approval of policy, and when I first started, I had drafted a financial policy based on historic the way the board historically dealt with large transactions or expenses. One of the things that I will update now with the new board and our current operations is that financial policy again, so I can bring it back to the board to be approved. But currently, I'm just acting off of how we treated it historically, and if we had an unusual expense, so something we do not routinely see, and it was $5,000 or more, we would get board approval. So this is a bid. This is the second heat exchanger we've had to replace since I've been with LCS. And the last time they quoted it at $5,000, and it came in just under, but with pandemic and inflation since then, it may be more. But I just wanted to go ahead and get board approval because it needs to be ordered, and it is something that needs to be done right away because it's starting to develop pinholes in it from rust. And that could leak carbon monoxide. He said it's not a danger now, but it will be if we don't get it replaced. So it's not really an optional thing. And I think we have 11 heat exchangers. They are doing some bids on some additional work we need that would be more expensive because we do have HVAC systems failing every winter. It just needs to be upgraded. But this is what we need for now, so I just wanted to bring it to the board for approval.
Do we have a policy to get multiple bids when we're looking at a threshold?
If it's being paid for with grant funding, like federal grant funding, we would be required to. But like I said, there's not currently a policy for
For
that.
those federal grants, is the threshold 5,000 or 10,000 or?
It's 10
20,000.
by, I believe the city is more conservative. And their provisions for that. And I think whenever we have grant money that goes through them and we're paying with grant money, we have to then follow theirs.
Mhm.
So, I think it's 10 with them. I'm trying to remember which way it is. It's 5 with them maybe.
And is this gonna be paid for with grant money, or this is coming out of where? It's like no details.
It's like, well, it's like, I just got it. But yeah, he was just here yesterday, so I just got this. He just told me that these holes were in there.
So their labor is astronomical compared to the actual part. The part is $1,364.95. So an itemization of this bid would be really helpful. I'm looking at the part on the website, they have the part number.
But that's not unrealistic.
I'm just saying, like, I just don't know, it's not a very detailed bid, I just don't know why it's not very helpful,
Yeah.
$5,000 even, it's just not really. I don't know.
Let's put it this way, it doesn't, if it's what I'm anticipating, I mean, we're talking about a heat exchanger and a rooftop unit probably,
It's up in the
yeah,
ceiling.
yeah,
They
that
have to
doesn't
get-
seem like an out of line price, and yeah, the labor associated with carrying a piece out of the, out of the unit and replacing it.
And this just happens to be who we contract with, and they do our routine maintenance, so he was coming in and doing routine maintenance and discovered this need.
And it
yesterday.
does, you're right, it does, if something like that is happening, it does need to be
Yeah.
remedied, because it will not heal itself.
And it becomes a safety issue.
This seems very time sensitive. I mean, we could ask in the future for bids to have more itemization of like labor and parts, but like for now, I'm ready to just
Yeah.
I
move
think
to
the only
approve.
way that, and this comes into play with.
Texting Mitch. Just making sure that's something that we can't help with first, if that's all right.
Kind of wondering the same, because, the health department, we work in a city-owned building, and all the stuff is taken care of. So we don't learn what these things actually cost, but we do, realize it breaks down, right?
And we're a weird hybrid right now as far as, where
Right,
work is happening.
Well, why don't we
maybe make
come
that,
back to that if she gets a response?
okay, so
And-
just, try to just kick
Yep.
Kick it down the
let's keep
agenda?
going.
Or can we,
Cause
But-
they
but
closed the
about-
library.
Oh, you're right.
And they closed the library,
You're
so
right.
we gotta keep moving.
could we vote to approve to have it fixed if the city cannot replace it
Sure.
for us?
That's,
Yeah,
There we go.
that sounds like a motion.
I move to approve this repair with the condition that the city is not willing to repair it at a lower cost for us in a equivalent amount of time.
a second, okay, any other discussion?
Mitch is gonna, be in touch tomorrow.
Sounds promising. All right, all in favor of the motion on the table? Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes.
Now, coming back to the earlier question, on an ongoing basis, is that what we want to work with, that 5,000 threshold?
I will revise the policy I originally drafted, update it for the current operations and programs we have and what things look like, and then we're gonna develop a policy approval process hopefully tonight.
Yeah.
And then I can bring it back.
All right, let's move down to regular meeting schedule, so let me share that one. Basically back to the ability. Okay, so historically, the board has met on the fourth Thursdays, and then I think deviated as needed based on holidays and such. So what I just assumed was, like, so far it seems like that has been working for us. So I just put together, what does it look like to do fourth Thursdays in the next calendar year? And the only things that didn't seem lined up were the November, December again, because of Thanksgiving and then that time between the Christmas, and New Year's. So my proposal was essentially we do 4 Thursdays for the first 10 months of the year. And then the last 2 months we do 3rd Thursdays. So it would be this schedule. Any thoughts on that?
Works for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, on the document that was kind of used to kind of keep track of the schedule. Other committees, as they get established, they kind of put together their schedule. So it allows us to have kind of global understanding of how busy we can all get on these committees. I don't know that we need to get that all figured out, but this document's in the shared drive, so as we continue to evolve our regular process for committees and such, we can just keep it all contained here as a way to keep track of it all. All right, is there a motion then to approve the 2024 board meeting schedule? This is basically regular meetings, not special.
I moved.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. So while we're in this same agenda item, I'll ask, is everybody agreeable to the December, 3rd Thursday of December this year as our next meeting?
I'm unable,
So that'd be the 21st of December.
that's, yeah. If we wanna do weekly for those special
No,
meetings,
that's right, we're gonna talk about that possibility.
the only Thursday I'm not able to do weekly would be the 7th, but I would be able to meet weekly. I would be able to meet the 14th, or earlier, I'm open, but,
Let me. Where did I put
Yeah.
my phone?
the only thing I have in the evening, but. Just.
I can do the 14th and the 21st. I can't do the 7th.
So you're kind of in the same boat. That actually, timing feels kind of good, because we'll have hopefully first round done.
Yeah.
So do we want to just say this month of December, we're gonna meet 14th and the 21st?
That sounds good.
Let's
Do we
do that.
try to meet again next week, or let you all do the work that you're doing?
I don't know if is there anything
Yeah.
we need to meet
Well,
about? Before talking
maybe
about-
this,
Oh, operations, we do.
I feel like we
Yeah.
probably do, let's just,
I could do the evening of the 5th,
do we just,
the 6th.
can we just get at least a quorum on the 7th, and then we can.
I can't, well, I'm not available the 7th, but.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
I'm not available the 7th.
so we're really,
What is happening?
that's stretching it,
I'm not-
well, okay.
So no on the 7th.
4th, I'm good. 5th, I'm good.
I'm not good on the 4th.
I could even do a noon on the 5th.
Oh, if we're looking at during daytime hours or evening.
Could do noon on the 6th.
I'm going the 5th and the 6th.
I'm not available on that, either of those.
Yeah, I'm gone. The whole week I'm gone.
Oh, that's good. Was part of our trying to figure out when to schedule this.
Yeah.
So
Noon on the 4th.
I can't do that.
Surgery.
Oh, that is definitely
No,
That's
no.
priority.
What's your schedule that might work for you next week?
The 7th or the 8th.
Hmm.
It's minor surgery.
How does the 8th look for anybody
I'm
else?
on a plane the next day.
Okay,
I've
good.
got a meeting in Topeka on the 8th.
Okay, you guys, we're just too busy. The 7th, maybe. At noon? But
I
There-
can feel about. A morning,
morning,
I could do morning on the 7th,
on the 7th, morning, like
Okay,
8, 9,
I could do 8 AM.
I think. Which you're only looking for quorum, right?
I'll
yeah.
bring the coffee.
I mean, what I'm assuming is by the next Thursday morning. We have the meeting and we can kind of say, yeah, this is a good proposal. It gets advanced to the city. That's our goal. Yeah,
And I'll have my iPad with me and it will be,
you'll be on Florida time.
I will be on Florida time, but I'll still jump on it.
So do we have December 7th at 9, at 10? What
eight?
are your thoughts?
I think 9.
9 or 8 is fine with me. Does
Okay.
9 work for you?
Nine's good.
And where is this meeting?
I'll not be able, I won't make it.
Who can make it at 9 o'clock next Thursday? 1, 2, 3, 4. Guaranteed, not gonna back out. That's a quorum.
Perfect.
That work?
And then you got Christina.
And maybe, yeah.
Possibly.
We can post it at the city if you'd like.
Would we be able to add Zoom into it? I mean, yeah, it's, okay. So we will,
I'm gonna ask a real odd question. And so what did you say as far as meeting space?
We can post it if you want. At where I'm at planning and development. I
What
can-
about it, is there a spot at the Pallet Village?
Probably not
Mhm.
for soon. Yeah.
Okay,
well, I can bring a hotspot. If you got a space, I can make anything like
Now, if you
that.
don't want a tour. we
Yeah,
can-
if you have electricity. Yeah, I like where you're going.
Yeah.
That would make the meeting a little more, I mean, adds context, right, to what we're thinking. Does it have a space for meeting? Just wouldn't have Wi-Fi?
I don't think it's gonna have Wi-Fi. but
Okay,
it's
I
gonna-
can take that, I can provide that.
Well, and I mean, would
Let me
can
just
I
say,
offer your office if we wanted to go to the pallet shelter first and then? I mean, so you're just, I was thinking you're close, I'm in the hospital or.
yeah, I can. I
the
can
health
say yes to
department's
that
close
too.
to the-
So how about we just say the location to be determined, but we at least get nailed down the time.
I mean, if you've got spot, then, I mean, there may not be chairs, but
Oh, we got to stand for now?
yeah.
I think we can handle that.
That'll make the meeting
How
short.
about, how about we just, we'll set the date and time and we'll announce the location once we get some
Okay.
details worked out. So then on the 14th would be just a regular 5:30 to 7:30. And the 21st, same thing, 5:30 to 7:30. And we'll find a space, hopefully the library.
Right, was that the 7 at 9?
7 to 9, yeah.
Are you backing out on us already?
No, I just,
Okay.
we're gonna write that part down.
I think this is, you know, inconsequential really, but that October meeting scheduled date, I think
The October 26th for next year.
this is, the 26th is Saturday, so I think that would be
Oh, no.
the 24th on.
Thanks for catching that. So I guess, yeah, double check my typing there. All right, well, I'm gonna make a motion. That we approve one amendment to the 24 meeting schedule. That I move, we amend the 2024 meeting schedule. That October is October 24th, not October 26th. In addition, that we will meet on December 7th at 9 AM, December 14th at 5:30 PM, and December 21st at 5:30 PM of this year. So 3 more meetings this year.
Second that.
All right, any more discussion? All right, all in favor of that meeting schedule?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes. Thanks. Now. Next item is policy review and approval process. You got, all right, go.
While Melanie's doing that, are we thinking about a policy committee or?
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
That's part
That's what we hope, I mean, it's, yeah,
of.
that's a cat out of the bag there.
Sorry to ruin your drama.
Well, and this is probably, you know, it's a standard board kind of committee, right? That kind of thing interests you?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
I like policy, but I'm
Mhm.
treasurer right now too, so.
Yeah.
Mitch said he'd be happy to make sure there's chairs. The community building's ready to go, so we can do that there.
So we can sit. I'll bring the Wi-Fi. Who's bringing the coffee?
I will. Text me on. But not a long text.
So I kind of drafted just a couple of different simple policies for policy approval by the board. I thought if we could at least agree upon procedures that I could develop it into a policy. And just wanted to run down some options. And the first one was, do we want this to be first go through a committee? Or do we want it to go, the policies to go directly to the board for approval? Another question was, who do we want to be able to propose policies? Because currently right now, like I'm updating old policies and making them fit our current operations and programs. So as a staff, I'm doing that, but also a board member, a committee, or other people could propose policies. So I just wanted to get an idea of who the board wanted to include to propose. So
Do you have a like book of existing policies?
There's a lot of policies on. At least that I remember looking through a month and a half ago or so, there's a
yeah,
lot of it's already built up.
yeah, some of that was procedure and policy. So there's a lot of things that I've been working on. But most of it that I have developed since I've been there has not had board approval. So I am now updating it to make sure that those policies and the language we're using also covers any program we start, because it's always been really specific to our housing focused low barrier shelter model. But now that we're looking at expanding services and offering winter shelter and possibly overseeing pallet, I want to make sure that the policies are worded in a way that encompasses all of our services, and then write procedures specific to each program and have procedures that are more fluid. So as we make minor changes, that those things don't have to be brought to the board, but keep the policy to where it does cover all of our programs and operations.
Right, that makes sense. I noticed in this, we didn't mention like personnel policies, and I don't know if that was, like, when I think about big buckets. Personnel is kind of like one of the policy areas,
Yeah.
finance is another. Is that,
Yeah, I can add it. I mean, it's, yeah,
I
I
think
actually hate when I say.
I mean, broadly, in my mind, like. There's liability for us not to be responsible to review and approve policies.
Yes.
And that was one of my
Yeah.
first conversations with you.
Yeah, I mean, it was,
Well, and quite frankly, there's additional liability if we have a policy, even if it's really old, if we haven't
Right.
either avoided it or, right, and we don't follow it.
Yeah.
So the first step in this process is let's see what we have.
Yeah.
And as a board, decide, these are the things that are policy level. You shouldn't be involved in procedure
Right.
necessarily, but we need to know, like, I have zero idea what the policies are.
yeah,
Right, I haven't seen any of, I haven't seen it.
right,
And the,
that feels dangerous, like not.
That
responsible.
doesn't, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think our first step is we really need to see what we have and what we don't have.
So,
do we want to do an approval process though?
Every policy should be approved by the,
Yeah, every single policy.
And that's what I've run into with an issue, because that's how I felt, and that all of my experience, that has been that every policy was brought to the board, and that was one of the first conversations I had with Charlie, is that every policy or non-policy, either way, is a potential liability for us as an agency. So we need to be bringing these things to the board. Currently, we have an employee handbook that has, the expectations there. But we also, when you look at at our records, we have a lot of drafts or things that were done at the moment by leadership, right? And I don't want any of that. I want it clear and approved and go from there, and policies that make sense for the services we're providing as an agency and our mission.
Yeah, and we need to also make sure that we have all the, you know, we need to have a whistleblower policy,
Right.
we need to have, you know, document retention policy, we need to have all of these lined up, and the ideal situation is that we have a review of all of these policies and a policy review schedule for us as a board to regularly make sure that we are reevaluating, approving, and looking at these
Right.
policies on a regular basis, so.
Agreed.
And that was also one of the items that I wanted to ask the board what their thoughts were in developing a policy approval process. Was, let me see. I put periodic review. I put that they would be subject to periodic review. But also, you know, most of the time you do approve them at least annually. So I didn't know what the board would like to do, if they would like to have at least an annual schedule and then as needed, or just keep the language general that they just would be.
I think it'd be helpful. I don't know that every policy is reviewed annually, but there ought to be a schedule that we approve. Like sometimes it might be every 3 years, sometimes it's every year. Like some flexibility, but that ought to be something we can all look at and go, all right, we know we're gonna look at that policy, you know, for next year, we have these all queued up.
And I think that a committee, if you guys choose to have a committee reviewing it first, before it comes to the full board, would make that decision of when something needs to be updated. And then maybe just a.
So this is kind of where I get into do we need a committee, or do we need to say, okay, this goes to the exec committee, because we don't have a lot of us. So is it better to just, like right now, the exec committee has a few tasks that,
Yeah,
So-
Yeah, we have another one.
So
yeah, I think
does this
we have
feel like,
another one.
does this feel like it fits to us for now?
Yeah.
Unless it's overwhelming, then we gotta think, you know,
I think
or do we want to, how do we want?
And right now I just put a designated committee. I didn't
Yeah,
like call a new committee or.
Is it possible to have, staff start first of pulling what exists already to the best of your ability with the most recent update and
yeah,
approval
okay.
date?
I could
Get
submit a
basically a
slide.
inventory of what we got.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
think that's, knowing what we have is important, and then we
Yeah.
can build a schedule
Mhm.
accordingly, because we're not gonna know what all the policies
Right.
you.
We need a
want.
list.
Yeah,
We gotta have a list to start with.
And even if it's not updated yet, like if there's some, like if there's
If
20
it was
that need to-
adopted by some board,
right,
it,
so we know what's out there.
So you want the ones only that have been approved by the board?
Just
Mm.
whatever is
If
being
they're not
used.
Even if it's
approved by
a
the-
work in progress, I'd say let's just at least put it on the list.
It's that's the problem that I didn't.
So whatever policies like your staff is using now.
Yeah.
All right, so. Throw it to exec or create a new committee? Where
I
are we at?
think do you think we need to throw it to exec, or do we think by the next meeting we can take a look at what we have already and then kind of take next steps? I feel like as we look at revisions of policies, then we can determine their schedule at the time of the approval process, that policy's schedule is a part of the policy, that
Okay.
his policy should be reviewed biannually, and so since it has to be approved by the whole board, I'm not sure if it makes sense to have an entire committee. You know what I mean?
Not sure I know what you mean, but I'll reflect back and you tell me if I got it. Actually, I'm not sure I got it, but here's what I'm gonna throw out as a step forward. Someone's gotta be responsible on our board that this gets done. So does that need to be a committee that we create to be responsible that it gets done? Or can the exec committee be tasked to make sure that that gets done? Ultimately, I think I heard everyone wants to be involved in improving these policies. So it's like, who's gonna do off the schedule? I assume it's gonna be leaning a little on staff to get collect all the documents.
Attention library patrons.
Well, then we gotta
The time
figure
is
out what's that.
7:30 And the library is
Schedule.
closing at 8
So-
p.m. We ask any patron needing a library card to
Here's
come to
what I-
the accounts desk immediately, since we will stop issuing new cards in 15 minutes. Any children or teens needing help calling for a ride home should go to the children's desk now. Thank you.
I think that the exec committee should look at the list of policies. And there are gonna be some critical policies like, well, let's just use the recent weapons. What is that policy?
Mhm.
And are we enforcing that policy and how, right? I mean, and that we triage these policies. I have no idea if we're talking about 50,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so I think probably our job next is, let's look at what we have, what's an immediate need,
Okay.
right? That we need to either get rid of some policies or make sure we adopt them as a board. And then, I mean, because we can't adopt the policies, but we sure can triage, what are we looking at?
Right.
And I think that's what I'm asking is because I'm trying to develop these significant procedures for program changes. And the policies maybe that we've used in the past, approved or not, aren't matching up necessarily with what we need. So,
Okay.
so I want to create these manuals that are, so that is what I'm prioritizing is the stuff that I need, like the weapons policy and anti-discrimination and those things. And that's why I'm looking for. a
Yes,
focus.
and we would like your feedback on this.
Yes,
Hey, this policy
Okay.
needs immediate attention.
and I could do side by side, like I could say, this is what I'm proposing and this is what we've had.
And let's take advantage of meeting weekly to see if, we need to formally approve these policies. If you send this to us in advance so we can read it ahead of the meeting, then we should be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am, uploading, I think I may have already done it, but I've already revised it since then. I've uploaded a master list of policies, procedures and forms. Mostly the policies is what I need you guys to look at. As I develop and that I can also do old versus new. And they will be in the board shared drive. So that you guys will be able to start reviewing them. One of my other questions was if we're developing a policy approval process, do we want to put some provision to be able to approve policy when there's an urgent need?
I
Whether
think
it's
so.
because I
This, I mean, this,
electronic format
Yeah.
of approval, like a,
this recently came up with the health board, actually.
yeah,
And so they're asking that we develop a method for them to do approval electronically
right, that's what it is.
for issues that are, this is more about purchasing. When it's not budgeted, it's over 20,000, we have to get board approval.
Mhm.
And the process to have the board convene is. It's not easy to do that timely, so
Right,
the board asked for us to write a policy that, or modify the policy to allow that.
I would rather have
Absolutely.
something that allows for it and never use it,
Mhm.
than not have it in there and not have the ability whenever we look.
I mean, yeah.
So. It feels like there's support for the idea of the exec committee get tasked with kind of shepherding policy review. Triaging it. Getting it queued up for the full board to see. and
Yeah,
review
but then the
policies.
full board needs to.
Always, yeah.
Yeah,
So that's,
so,
do you want?
you wanna put a motion out there to tell that?
I'm gonna do it like this. So moved.
Alright, I move that the exec committee, be tasked with responsibility, for overseeing the policy review and approval process. For the full board.
Second.
Alright, any other discussion? Any, or all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Alright, motion passes.
So Melanie, can you get us like the updated list, or not updated, just what we have like today, like all the policies? Like, I mean, you don't have to do anything to them, but just so we have like, this is where we are. And then like by,
Send a link to this folder that you
Well, I'm
mentioned?
gonna have like
With-
what you sent me yesterday with like the master list, but it doesn't have everything on it yet.
No,
No, I know, like, and I don't need to make it perfect, like, I just want us to have whatever.
I mean, I can do a folder and drop everything I can find.
Okay,
Yeah, that'd be great.
And please identify, you were saying there are policies that are in draft. Please identify them separately if they've never been adopted by the board, because
And I'll have. to
That's
go through all
not
the
an
minutes
LCS
to know,
Well-
because nobody actually had a process.
yeah,
Well, I don't, I mean,
I don't-
that doesn't seem like a good use of Melanie's time to go through all the meeting minutes.
oh, no, that's not what I'm saying.
No.
I'm saying,
Yeah,
send us the actual policies that have been adopted or
To the
used.
best of your knowledge.
To the best of your
so
knowledge.
I guess what I'm hearing is that might not be something that's ever been done.
it's never been, without me going through the meeting minutes, there's no way for me to know if
Ah.
they've been approved, because they didn't have a
Right.
system. It's not like a typical policy approval where you see a date that it was last
Right.
revised and approved. We don't have it.
Well, let's just start where we're at, put everything you got into the folder and
I
best
can show you what we've been using.
label it as best you can and we'll,
Let's create a spreadsheet too that goes along with all these individual policies, so we can track what's been formally approved.
Going forward.
Yeah,
And my process,
that's
it's
great.
all labeled, identified and known. I mean, that's.
Okay.
So well, I wanna have like a date that we'll have it, just so I know when to look for it, so like, and what's reasonable, like. Is a week reasonable?
Yeah, and that's something I can definitely have other people help with, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So like by end of day next Thursday. Okay, thank you.
Next on the list, not sure how far we're going on this one, but I wanted to put the advisory committee on our agenda. Because our bylaws do specifically say we shall do this, which is a little bit more strongly worded than, you can do it. Yeah, so, part of the restructuring of the board was to restrict the size. The old board had up to like 20 people or something. It was perhaps a little unwieldy. And in the process of drafting the new bylaws, the shrinkage of the board to a smaller group, we recognize that there are voices out there that will be missed, because of that. And so the advisory committee was intended as a way to say, we know we need to have lots of perspectives, and, so it was put in there, and I think, there's been a few moments where I've had discussions or gotten emails that kind of, the answer is back to we need to put the advisory committee into place. But we haven't determined what's the process. How does someone get on the advisory committee? How does so it's just like, I'd like to get at least that conversation started.
Yeah.
And if we can possibly say, here's the process, we can decide tonight, but if we can't, that's fine, we can at least get the discussion started.
I think the, potentially an interesting process to have people, submit interest in the advisory board, kind of, first of all, if we selected guests only, I don't wanna have to identify names of guests, I want people to opt in to be identified as an advisory board member, but I also want a variety of different experiences, so anything from family members of those experiencing homelessness to, former guests to current guests. I think a variety of different experiences would be really helpful here, and I wonder if having just a simple application process for people to express their interest in what they want to bring to the advisory committee would be helpful for us to then select, and then maybe suggestion that the advisory committee is no larger than our current board.
I like it.
If I'm gonna start.
Yeah.
Who would be who would take the lead on the process?
I'll take it,
Thanks.
of course.
You finally got that job here. Well, I got 2 jobs tonight.
Well, I feel really bad.
Well, I mean, I think we have to get something started. I mean, it'll clearly probably evolve as we continue, but,
Are you feeling better now?
but
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does, I've been feeling like we've been a little negligent on taking that task on, and I know it's maybe not the highest priority, but as people come along and say, hey, I think this, I would like to have an option other than say, thanks. I mean, I got an email just last week and I said, I kind of responded with, well, there is this advisory committee and I'll bring it to the board. So we get it started, and I don't know if that person's interested, but it feels like we're being more responsive and we can get that thing off the ground.
Will the advisory board be able to nominate someone to serve on the regular board?
I mean, the city and the county have their role, and they could probably take interested parties to like advance to the city and county, and then there's these two,
Only two for
Positions.
existing is the only,
well, we're
For
the
the independent.
independents, and
So they could make that
you
for
have
future.
2 years and I have 3.
Right, yeah.
So like that would be an interesting way to think, how do we identify like candidates for the independent positions?
And the bylaws say that the current board, like the existing board, votes on the independent members. So
Yeah.
there's no
can we
reason,
add more independent members?
the bylaws, I mean, they would
No,
have to
no.
change the bylaws, but
Not the number.
they could nominate it for the board to consider. I mean, that
Like-
wouldn't be the
like
binding.
When
but-
Rebecca's term is done, then we, the rest of us, the other 6, have to decide who's gonna fill that term.
But the advisory committee.
And
can
the
make
advisory
suggestions.
committee would be a great way to say, maybe there's a person on that committee that might be interested, or maybe they have a suggestion. So those are ways.
It would just be so helpful if the advisory, if we could have one more, so at least the executive committee could at least all meet without it being quorum.
Yeah,
Did the bylaws say
And-
that you could have more independent as long as the
No.
city county remains the majority?
No.
no, the resolution the city and county had said, it kind of called for the idea that the majority had to be appointed by them.
Just one.
So-
would be Such a game
But the whole
changer.
board can vote. again.
Yeah, the
But
board
we,
could
if
change
we
the
all
bylaws.
agree, all 7 of us kind of come together, say, we want to add X. We can certainly amend our bylaws. That's the only area where we have to be unanimous in amending the bylaws. So yeah, I would think if we're gonna grow the size of the board, it'd probably be 2 at a time to keep that odd number.
Yeah.
So add 2 more. And I think then if the 5 are city county, that the other 2 additions could be independent, and we could figure out whoever we want.
So, for the recruitment process, the advisory committee, what is the function in which we will, will it be a regular agenda item on the board meeting to hear from a representative from the advisory committee? Is that what we're asking of them?
It says, yeah, the advisory committee shall select 1 or 2 of its members to attend to meetings of the board of directors.
Okay, thank you,
So that
sorry.
kind of keeps
I
them
read that.
connected to us.
Shall
That's
be
all right.
advisory only and non-voting.
Yep. But
Now,
essentially, we're
it
kind of,
does say that the advisory committee may consist of city and or county employees of the corporation, or representatives of social service agencies or other nonprofit agencies and other representatives of the public. So
Sounds a lot like
does,
that round 2.
does-
it does, and I kind of see your wheels spinning already, because,
so are.
That sense that we
our
had our-
guests then, that what we're listed as guests for our meeting, are they advisory committee potentials?
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. In fact, that was part of the whole, like, we were in the discussions about the revision of the bylaws. The first draft allowed for the commissions to put all employees on, and that was a concern of the old board. So we pushed back on that and said, there's a role for them, but not on the board, it's on the advisory committee.
In a non-voting,
Right. And in some ways, that's been a practice that's been in place for a while, like. We don't have it explicit in the bylaws that they're ex officio members, but it's routine that we have a city and county. Staff. Participating in the meetings. So. But the other thing that was in the old bylaws, employees of the shelter could not be on the board. So we kind of just maintain the consistency. Employees aren't able to be on the board. They can be advisors on the committee. if that advisory committee was in place, it would certainly make sense, they might be the second round panel.
Attention library patrons, the time is 7:45 and the library will be closing in 15 minutes. No new library cards will be issued tonight. Any children or teens needing help calling for a ride home should go to the children's desk now. Public computer sessions will end in 5 minutes. Please bring anything you plan to borrow to the nearest checkout station at this time. Thank you.
Okay,
Can I just add one thing? You were talking about drafting that policy to be 32 degrees,
With the wind chill.
but our
agreement,
agreement says 40 degrees.
Yeah.
The,
no, that's germane to the topic at hand, but I hear you. I had the same thought.
I mean, I'm just like, it has to go to city. It's gonna be approved. The winter shelter is gonna be approved by the city, so it was 40 straight. And I'm gonna propose 32 with the wind chill, because the wind chill,
So it could be 42 degrees,
And
but
still-
if the wind chill
right,
or the feels like temperature.
because that's
is
more dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous at that
Well,
point. Yeah, it could be.
that's what you're saying.
Mhm.
All right, Louis. Get through here tonight. I'd like to, I move that that Elizabeth is the lead on creation of our advisory committee. Yes.
Second,
Okay, any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion passes, thanks. Really appreciate that. All right, next, I just wanted to create a kind of a standing option for us to be able to talk about what anybody's thinking we need to be doing in the next, so I just penciled in this notion of future agenda items. And to kind of tease apart things that we just want to learn more about, or what we expect to see like presentations about. And I know there's been some discussion earlier about like the audit. Can we get the auditor when they finish, give us an actual presentation? So I just put a pencil that in, and I think this is one of those, if we don't have to do it all tonight, but if you guys are, as you're thinking about our work, just getting this kind of down on paper could be helpful for us to think future oriented, like. So I'm imagining, you could just send me anything you want added. And then we won't discuss it, but I'll just add it. So that when we get to our meeting for this area, if you've added something, you could then explain, oh, I put that on there, here's my thinking. And then we could just decide, yeah, that makes sense, let's keep it there. So it's just kind of a working draft of things we are interested in either learning about or things we think we need to make decisions about.
When will we get a presentation from the auditor? Yeah.
When they finish, so.
Is
they're
it done? I
close.
thought it had to be
The
done.
990's filed. It's
Yeah.
just they haven't finished their final report, that they will find and offer.
Yeah, so I think as soon as we can get it, then do it, I don't know. Is it possible before the year is over? Like,
I can ask.
okay,
I don't know.
So we don't even know if we have an unqualified.
not yet. So that was kind of my attempt, is to let all of us kind of weigh in on things that need to be on the agenda. And I do eventually think, like, our exec committee, when we get our, like, regular agenda setting schedule, that seems like an obvious task, is we work together to create the agenda.
Go ahead and put contracts and agreements on here.
Under a study session or
Yeah, I mean, because
as a start.
I think that's something that is really important, that as we look at policies and procedures and talk about things like the audit, the contract with the auditor should not be between the executive director, it should be with the board of directors and the auditor. And same thing with our accountant, it should be a board signed contract
So
agreement.
it was like my day two.
Okay.
Like Thursday night, I got voted in as board president.
But it just.
Friday, I think, Melanie sent me and said, you need to sign this.
Yeah.
And so, I will admit, I didn't, I was ready to say, yeah, get it done.
Yeah.
Or maybe we need to be more specific about timing.
And we need to probably use a different auditor because that one's been used for so many years.
Which might get back to the policy, right?
Yeah.
Any other ideas off the top of your head? If not, you just send it to me and I'll put it on here.
For
And-
auditors.
No.
Oh, no, for future agenda.
Well, I just saw that we had there's like an agreement, in our agreement, it says that we're supposed to be doing audits.
That's for grant.
Well, in our
And
contract, we
yeah,
have
yeah.
to do audits twice a year, so.
And then.
Okay.
It's obvious we haven't really got into our budget for next year and that needs to be done. So I threw that on our regular agenda. That probably should have been done, you know.
And now that these
Today.
changes will have to determine where we start.
Well, we can approve a 2024 budget, I mean, you can adopt new expenditures, I mean, they're fluid documents, we have the original approved document, but we can approve revisions throughout the year as agreements with the city. Is it possible to take a look at, like, use the meeting on the 14th to carve out time to review a draft for 2024, so at least we can start with something?
Well, it's to you guys.
What are
your
Because-
thoughts?
The budget wasn't even adopted until midway through the year.
Mhm.
It's basically ready to go with some minor adjustments for what this year's what expenses I have discovered that could.
Well, I think a critical thing is staffing cost.
Yeah,
If you're
Gonna be
increasing the
higher.
staffing,
Well, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Where we're gonna start with this, because we're going through these changes right now, and we know it is going to impact right at the beginning of the year. So I could use the current, but we also know it's going to change immediately.
So Melanie, we have a meeting next Thursday, so we could talk about it then and try to have something ready for the 14th.
all right, I'm just gonna sort of pencil that in then, so put a date on there. Is it in any way conceivable we could get the audit to be part of the study session on the 14th? Is that,
I don't know where they're at with it. I just know that the 990's been filed and they haven't. So if they needed any more information.
I feel like if the 990's been filed, we can wait until January for the auditors, right? I mean, I don't know,
They'll just give adjusting entries.
who signed the 990?
Well.
Oh, I guess I
nobody
didn't sign.
signed it, but
how does that work? Saw my name on
I know, because I told them that the people that were on there weren't here anymore.
there. Right,
So they,
Yeah. so
whoa,
they-
But the
your
current-
name on it?
Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't even on the board in
I
2022,
think probably.
but I don't know how that works, you gotta,
The president.
but you weren't able to see it before they submitted it?
I guess not. How does that really work?
That doesn't work.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
It seems a little odd.
Yeah, especially if you're the one who signed the contract with them, the fact that they didn't send it to you before they submitted this 990.
Something's wrong.
Yeah,
So it's not right here.
well, work to be done, obviously.
I think because
Should I reach out to them about getting a presentation?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that
That sounds
maybe the
good.
issue?
How about a copy of the 990?
Yeah.
I think.
We got that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because I feel like we need to, clearly the middleman's not working, so,
Okay,
like they should have been directly, you signed a contract, they should be working with you on, if you're gonna be, I mean, that's just, to me,
This is the
Disappointing
result of us not
professionals.
having any policies.
seriously, you're right.
There's no
Okay.
routine, there's no procedures, there's
Yeah.
no.
this is not something a procedure, this is something an auditor should know, that if,
Yeah.
that,
And that's what I'm saying, they've had them so many years, I think it's gotten very comfortable.
Well, we're gonna approach it differently our next time. All right, any other items under future agenda? Okay, so then I just, as a placeholder, board member items, this is really, if there's anything anybody wants to bring up. If not, then, Okay, then if I get a motion to adjourn our meeting,
and I'll second.
all right, any discussion? All in favor of adjourning, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, meeting adjourned.